we're live.
And go.
And
We're
go.
here.
We're here. Who are you?
Kelly. I'm Roman, and I'm stoked to roast today.
Okay, but I want to
How-
hear you say your last name because it's so beautiful when you say it.
Roman Villard.
Very
So
nice.
it's a silent D. It's like V-LAR, Villard. A French origin, which could also be roasted in many ways, I'm sure.
Well, not by Canadians, because we
True.
love the province of Quebec and all of the food there and the beautiful old buildings. But I have a question. This is not part of the roast, and you don't even know it's coming, and I do know the answer. How old were you when you realized your parents spoke, or your father, I think, specifically spoke English?
You like that fun fact.
I
So
do.
I was too old. I think I was about 8 when I realized that my dad spoke English, and it's one of those things where like he spoke English around me, but he only spoke French to me, and so it's like, how do you? I don't know how did it take me that long to connect the dots? There was a broken process in my brain somewhere to figure that out, but yeah.
Okay, so we roast that. We roast that process. I know we're roasting workflows, but I just find that such an interesting fact. And probably it's great. You are fully bilingual, correct, in French?
Yeah, so I've got the fluency of about a 12-year-old in French. So if you talk to a 12-year-old kid here, you can have a great conversation, but there's
Right,
like nuanced business language and things like that that I would struggle with.
right. But you have the maturity of more than a 12-year-old boy, right?
It depends. It depends.
Okay, so we know each other personally. We've traveled together quite a bit, so I won't answer that question. But away we go. Um, and I'm Kelly with the ordinary last name of Parks, and I have Comwaters Cloud Accounting and use Financial Sense in our firm. You, Roman, what's your business?
Yeah, so I also run a firm, Full Send Finance. We've been around for a few years now and are heavily involved in building out processes and efficiency and technology. And by no means do we have all of the right answers, but it's a very intentional effort on our end to ensure that we're as efficient as possible for our team, but then also for improving client outcomes. And so while today we have the opportunity to dig into client management and roast. It's gonna be hard for me to roast because I like being nice, but getting to review some processes that will help firms improve their outcomes. Yeah, we're learning as well, right? Like there's a long ways for us to go, and we don't do it correctly. So we'd love some feedback in this process. If you have any questions, please pop them in the comments here, and we will address those as we move forward. But today we're on client management.
Right. Okay. And just to start, I've had some insights to what you and Stacy are doing over at Full Send, and I love how intentional you are. Even though, as you say, you're building the ship as you're flying it. I guess that would be a plane, right? But good for you guys. You guys are so intentional, and it's really something to behold. So yeah, but now
Well,
we're in. Oh, go ahead.
I'll say I appreciate that. It's one of those things where we've failed a lot,
Mhm.
and failure is a part of this process, right? To creating better internal processes and rhythms and cadences for your firm. So we'll explore some of those failures along with the wins, and yeah, we'll
Sure.
dive in.
Okay, great. And hi, I hope I say this right, Vahid. Hello back to you too. Um, okay, so fire away. Roman, are you going to screen share the questions or just read them?
Yes, let me screen share this so we can all be looking at the same thing here.
Include our visual learners here.
Yes, precisely. So what we're doing here is we're gathering information from various channels, various groups that exist to try to understand what pain points exist in workflow. And so this first topic falls under the arena of client management. So what it says, I'm looking for feedback on workflow. Once the customer signs the contract, I send a request for a deposit and link to set up monthly payment. Here's where I'm getting stuck. Do I wait for the deposit to hit before I send the list of documents I need? Do you send a secure link for them to upload their passwords? This is the part of the workflow that's not well documented. Let me know how to improve this workflow. Kelly, do
Okay.
you want to kick off on some thoughts here?
Yeah, because I'm seeing two things. I have a question. So the deposit, when she says I'm wait, or he says they say I'm waiting for the deposit to hit. I don't think they mean the actual deposit in the bank. I think they mean confirmation that it's been signed and agreed to. Would you make that assumption?
We can go down both trains of thought here. I would interpret that as like a deposit for ongoing services.
That's what rather than the money hitting the bank, I'm saying, has the client approved the payment request? Because sometimes that can take a few days to hit the bank.
Sure.
So should we just assume that the client they want to know if they wait for the client to approve it?
Yeah. As soon as it's approved, and then you're still waiting on the draft, but it's been approved. Let's do that.
Yeah. Okay. So I am not looking to scale at a rapid rate. So that's where I'm coming from on this. So I tend to be a little harder, because if somebody doesn't do the things ahead of the other things, then I don't move forward. So if they are not going to sign my payment agreement while we are getting engaged, they are not going to get me things once we are married, is kind of my attitude. So I don't want the client with requesting too many things, the prospect, because the deposit or getting the payment processor signed should be a very similar process. You documents and give all of the things. And so that's kind of the first request. That's a bit of a tell how things are going to work out. And I don't want documents from people that I'm not going to continue on with an engagement, because that's a security risk. The more documents we have to guard, the more our security goes up. And also somebody can say, oh, well, they saw them. So also on that note, I actually send out a confidentiality or an NDA, whatever you want to call it, a confidentiality agreement. And I've had some people say to me, well, why are you sending that? Shouldn't the client? Well, the client's not going to. So it just gives a little higher level of professionalism, I think, and reminds them that you're thinking of things they haven't. But that's going off topic. But so what would you do? And then let's get to the passwords after that.
Yeah, sounds good. So I have got a bit of a different lens in that we are a rapidly growing firm. We also want to protect our team, our capital, ensure that we're working with the right clients. And so the first part, from a roasting perspective, it's like, listen, you should not ever be doing any work for a client before you have confirmation that they will pay you. And
Right.
so you open up yourself to a tremendous amount of risk by starting work ahead of receiving any type of payment terms. Now, that said, there may be circumstances in which you have a personal relationship with somebody, or you've got this innate trust. Whatever that is, I would still require any payment methodology, any deposit, to be at the very least approved before you start any workflow. In fact, I would actually bake that into a workflow to say, hey, upon receipt of payment methodology or payment means, connected bank account, whatever you think that is, then we can kick off the next step. Don't even schedule a kickoff meeting. Don't request any documents until you have all of that, the T's crossed and the I's dotted. The way in which we accomplish that, because we also require payment before services start, is that we bake that all into Ignition. So
Right.
our Ignition contracts, in order for them to be signed, they are required to input a payment methodology. And so we're not even talking until that happens. Now, it's really scary to jump into that space, because it's like, oh, well, what if we lose the deal, or what if they don't want to put in their payment terms? Ultimately, if you draw a hard line there and you say, hey, this is how we operate, more often than not, people will actually respect you a little bit more for holding that firm line. But then also it gives you security on the back end as well. So I would remove yourself from the internal dialogue of, hey, this may increase friction, when in reality it probably reduces your risk and creates a little bit more confidence that you're really steadfast in your processes.
Yeah, and that you're a professional organization. And so I want to go back to a couple of things. Sometimes we can apps, the technology, and our processes do the heavy lifting of the things we might say yes to that we shouldn't say yes to. Let the app say no. And so you're using processing. It's a charm bit of around out there in the accounting space. specifically file reviews, because not everybody, there's other ways of doing it. So I have a type form that's an intake process for file reviews. There's a ton of automation behind that type form, including sending over and starting a project in Financial Sense, the file review. But the third thing, so there's an introduction of us, because some people come to me just for a file review, cold. And so there's an introduction to us. Then there's a question. Do you use QuickBooks Online? Are your bank feeds connected? Those are the two things I really need to know to do a file review. And then there's payment. So the paywall goes up quickly before we even start to go through the other list of questions, kick off anything in Financial Sense, which starts to. So if you're doing project work, it's critically important that you get that payment ahead of time. The other, for monthly recurring revenue, I do the quote and the engagement letter, all of the things. And then mine are actually in a product called Pluto, my payment requests, because really, I'm not particularly cheap when it comes to my apps. But if I can do monthly recurring revenue at 50 cents a payment rather than 2.9%, that's a bit of a win that there's no way to automate that right now into Pluto. And
Really?
Yeah, I know. Pluto doesn't have a Zapier integration.
Wow.
I'm working with them. Yep. But you know what? It takes me all of 30 seconds. And it is so worth what the money would be in the end, because I do larger engagements as well, right? They're not the $500.
Yeah.
So it's really about what your engagements look like. But putting it behind something like Practice Ignition or putting it behind a form with a paywall, there's lots of ways to do this, but don't do the work without it.
Yep, totally agree. And then if you are using Financial Sense on this front, they do have Zaps with
Yep.
Ignition. You can create up Zaps with Anchor, with these different tools to say, hey, upon completion of a proposal, then you can kick off, maybe it's an onboarding project for a client that then requests passwords and documentation and things like that. And so we've got those things set up. There is still a human intervention in that we want to ensure that those things are done. Yes, we kick off an onboarding process, and then we will intentionally send that out when the time is right, because there are instances where we don't kick off with clients for a month after they sign. And so we don't want that to hit right away, as their payment's going to be coming on the kickoff date of the contract. But certainly something that you should be paying attention to without starting any work before you have confirmation on the dollars.
I think that second question is, do you send a secure link for them to upload passwords? A little bit of that depends. There is a client vault in Financial Sense. There's no way for the clients to put their information in there, but they could put it. You would have to figure out a secure way. So encrypted fields in a form might be a way to do that. But for us, it really depends. We use 1Password. Depending on what I am one of those that suggests right away, get yourself a password management app. I actually have documentation on how to implement one. So I'll help them through that process, and then they can add us as a user. There's all kinds of ways to do this. I have a couple of clients that their stuff is in our 1Password. So I will admit to being a bit all over the map on this.
Yeah.
Yeah. You?
So we use Dashlane internally for password management, VPN. Also have Practice Protect as well for access to various systems. Now, the challenging part from an means in which you can connect to your client's information, in any circumstance in which we can create an alias of, like, let's say Gusto at full send, or Shopify or Stripe at full send, that then can provision access to multiple clients. We don't want our clients' login. We don't want our clients' passwords. We want to establish our own access point that limits our ability to transact within their file. And this is purely from a CAS perspective. This isn't taxes. But to the extent possible, we want to be able to control the access on the back end as well as password administration. So via using Gmail or Google aliases, Practice Protect, and Dashlane is really how we manage that. And ultimately, all of our passwords are 16 or longer digits, and we don't know any of them. They're all protected in the vault, and we feel pretty comfortable with that process.
We're 90% there. I have a couple of clients that I have one with Instacart. This is how rare it is for us. Sure. I have one with Instacart that I'm using their login information. It's fairly new. It's a project, a cleanup project. I will probably, if I keep the client, I will probably just get them to give me my own, or I'll create an admin for myself with their permission. But that can be a bit of a messy one. What do you do with the passwords? But I think you've come up with a good solution. Yeah.
It works. There are still instances where we do need to collect client logins, and those get stored in the vault, and it's only accessed by certain individuals. And so it's such a hard game right now because not every app partner has the same way to log in as a partner. So yes. Do we want to jump into the next?
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, you're going to have meetings for onboarding anyways. So find out what you're going to be doing for app access and what the most efficient process and secure one is, really. Okay, yeah, let's jump into the next. Go, Roman.
Okay. All right. How do you track your clients' receipts? I'm not looking for specific apps, but more of an idea of a different process to track which receipts are missing and then update the transactions in QuickBooks once sent in, if needed, and check it off the list. I also want to have an easy way to pull the transactions that need clarification and or receipts to send to the client. If certain apps will help with that, let me know. Otherwise, I'm looking for a workflow. Currently using QuickBooks Receipts and have a process that works well, but it's time consuming. I feel like there's probably a more streamlined way to and need help finding that breakthrough. Tried utilizing the tags, but it's not doing what I was hoping.
Right. Do you want me to take this one, given that I'm Canadian?
Dive in. The Canadians know best.
Yes. So for people who don't know this, as Canadians, we have what's called a VAT tax. That is filed it's a sales tax filed either monthly, quarterly, or annually. And we do need receipt verification, or you are not allowed to claim. So it's a flow-through tax. You charge on sales, and you can flow through and claim the expense HST, GST here. So if a receipt comes in, sometimes it is not the full 5% of the GST. If there's a tip or there's all kinds of extenuating circumstances. And so we are beholden. The CRA, that's the Canadian Revenue Agency, insists that we have receipts. We don't necessarily, like the actual people that need to have, the GST will not always be 100%, like 5% of the total value. We need to see them. And it's good practice to have them. So that's why we know this topic so well. Word's gone out. I love QuickBooks Online, but receipt is for small business who are doing their own books. That's my humble opinion, and it is not for collaborating with accounting partners. It is too much of a complicated workflow. So I would, if you can, get it out of there. I prefer, there is two products that come to mind. One is Dext, DEXT, and one of them is HubDoc. They do the same thing. One of them is more expensive, but a much more robust product. And HubDoc is fantastic, but it does not have all the bells and whistles. So I'm a second. The receipts are going to come in. They're going to be OCR'd, and then you can publish them over to QuickBooks Online, and an image copy will show up over in your GL, Xero, or QuickBooks Online, whichever one it is. If those go in correctly, and depending on how it's paid, it's going to match in the bank feed, and you're done. Here's where you need to decide what your workflow to look like. Do you want to leave things in the bank feed until getting close to the reconciliation period? If you do, Dext itself has a feature where it will parse out what's missing in the bank email right from there. Super efficient if you don't want to code things that you don't know about. If you do code things, you want to put them to uncategorized transactions. I personally do sub accounts of cost of goods sold, expenses, and then anything that we don't know about would be uncategorized, truly. In that case, you go over to Financial Sense, has a baked-in product called Recats, and you can, through one location, wherever you're communicating with your client in Financial Sense, it will show up in the client portal so that they can then see what needs recategorization, Receipts can be uploaded, comments can be added, and then we can code them, and all of that will flow back through to QuickBooks Online. Those are the two super efficient things to do in here. Those would be the best workflows for that. Anything to add, Roman?
Yeah, it's interesting because as a CAS firm that doesn't do tax in the U.S., where we don't have to deal with the same uh, maybe challenges or levels of detail that you're required to in Canada,
Right.
we think about this through the lens of materiality. Like what would our clients want to pay attention to from a receipt perspective when they have a team that's on a card or spending money that they want to have some approval process of or documentation of. And so our first step is just let's establish a materiality threshold of where we want that level to be from a receipt capture perspective, because we know that the IRS is going to be coming knocking on your door for a $20 receipt at Starbucks. So we don't want to overburden the process by capturing everything. We want to create that right level of engagement on this level of detail. That said, we don't use anything like Dex today. We really like Ramp from a spend management perspective. Because ultimately what we want to do is create a process for our client that they can self-serve, that they can manage. And so to the extent possible, tools like Ramp and Market allow you to set various thresholds for expense submissions to require receipts on them and approval of reimbursement or however that spend is being managed within the company. So you can require receipts for specific vendors, specific departments, certain budget thresholds within the app in Ramp. And then all of that is synced back to QuickBooks. All of the receipt capture, the invoice detail, all of that's going to be pushed over to QuickBooks in a really easy, consumable way. I do want to hit on, as you mentioned, the recat feature in Financial Sense has been something that has been really interesting. And the one thing that I really like about that is that you can create an internal rhythm within your firm to say, hey, every Friday, client A, you will receive a list of everything uncategorized if we're managing your bank feed on a weekly basis, and then batch push those to your client every Friday at the same time. Rather than getting one-off portal requests for uncategorized, that just gets really burdensome for a client. So I think it's like $4 a month per client file. Like it's a very low cost for really what you get in the efficiency of being able to have that type of communication with your client. So batch process on CATs, send that to your clients through the portal that they're already familiar with. And then as soon as you get that back, you can approve in the system and it'll auto push to the right category in QBO.
Yep. Okay. So we're both online with recats in Financial Sense. And it is nice if you can have all your client communications and requests in one place that they understand. The end user experience is so key for our clients. And I think a lot of people a little bit lose sight of that. They're like, how can I be most efficient? How can you be most efficient and still deliver an exceptional client experience? I want to go back to materiality for a second. So I'm a bad little bookkeeper up here. There are a lot of accounting professionals who want to see every single receipt as well. It's a bit of a mindset. I don't. I also speak to materiality. They're not going to CRA jail for not having the Starbucks receipts. And Starbucks has basically it is the same amount. Everything has the same amount of GST. Anyways, it doesn't matter. Materiality comes into play for this bad little Canadian bookkeeper. I am not going to burden my clients with $20 expenses. What I do, I say do. What I do is, I know I say, Roman, you know how I roll, I very clearly explain, and actually a note goes out at the beginning of the year. They get the CRA mileage rates, and they get a note reminding them that meals and entertainment are often a flag for audit, that there is very little tax burden relief with them. So think very carefully about what you are claiming for meals and receipts. If the CRA sees a $20 charge every single morning, they know you're buying breakfast on the way in to work. I remind my clients, I don't heavily police them after that. They're grown-ups. But I do believe in compliance. So it goes on the tick list of things of clients that may not be with me for a long time, right? So meals and entertainment and travel are part of my annual review. But materiality versus bugging your client is a very important concept. I want to go back to expenses too. Dex does do very robust expense reporting, approvals, and pushing that through to QuickBooks Online as well. I'm not trying to sell Dex here. I'm trying to sell a process. If you can't get them into something like rate or so if you can't get them into an expense management program specifically, then Dex itself, this is what we are using with our clients. So that also streamlines the workflow because it's in one app as well. Receipts go in, receipts are then sorted, and nobody has to file things away. So it's important to think about not just what the price of the app is, but also what are all the savings that are coming into play and the efficiencies and consistency. Okay.
Yeah, and another hot tip on that too is that you can charge more for spend management services. You know, you can articulate that in a way that provides a value to a client, helps them with their processes. And so I would certainly recommend exploring what it looks like to add that to a statement of work and potentially increase your fees because of that. I know Dan Luthi is a resource in the market that talks at length about how to do this really, really well. So definitely check out what Dan Luthi is doing, how to set up really good spend management services and how to communicate that to clients. Debbie says Kelly is cutting out. So sorry.
I'm coming in closer. Thanks, Debbie. I have another thought. Can you hear me better now?
Yes, copy.
Okay. So not just spend management as a source of high margin revenue, accounts payable in general. My world changed for accounts payable with HubDoc and Dex and something like Pluto, one of the payment platforms on the back end. And the reason that it changed is we became incredibly efficient. We're no longer opening the mail, flattening the mail, entering data by hand, then into the GL, filing all of the mail into a place to remember to pay it, and then paying it through the GL, printing out the checks, taking them to the owner. So I had a client that we went from basically Tuesday afternoons for getting stuff into Thursday afternoons for making payments, and then back to Tuesday mornings for fixing payments, to essentially like 2 hours start to finish. And we didn't change the price because the client was over the moon how easy it was for them. So that is a high revenue because it is a high value service to clients to have start calling because notifications go out. So AP is a high value, high margin service that you can add.
Anything that revolves around cash coming in or cash going out, you know, you want to have those processes really intentionally aligned and then be able to communicate that value prop really well. I know we have a couple minutes left here. Kelly, I see your connection is in the yellow right now, so I'm not sure what the connectivity looks like. But for those that are online right now, we'd love to grab a couple of live questions and hear what you have, what current pain points you're going through. Happy to workshop some of this stuff live. If anybody wants to put a question or comment or thought in the chat box, I'm going to pull this screen share down.
Storm, my internet is coming. We've got quite a storm going here.
Yeah, is that the tail end? A barrel? Is barrel coming up there?
Barrel's coming up.
Mm.
Yeah.
I don't see anything else coming in. Is there anything that you're focused on right now, or any workflow that you're really looking on improving, Kelly, personally?
I am even further. Like I've niche out, sub-niching. So one of the things I try to do is before I actually put something out into the wild to be a service that people know about, other than my guinea pig friends, and I don't make them make guinea pig noises. I do try to make sure that I've got the intake process on that smooth, so that's a good thing. So now I'm trying to noodle through. I'm looking at doing a service where, because I already deal with accounting firms, so it's accounting for accountants, and I do firms' books and I can do cleanup projects. But what I really want to do is clean up make it efficient for their clients' workflows for within the firm. So I want to build out systems for those. But the very first thing I'm thinking about is how can I make the intake process and payment process for the people that are going to buy that service. I think it's really key, like that you think about what the intake process is going to look before you really release it to the wild at large. Okay, to tell some people you've got this service, but back ending it rather than getting it up on your website and hoping like heck that it all works out, I think is important. What about you, Roman? What are you guys working on over there?
I just hope like heck that everything I try works out. I mean, it's funny because like I think you and I have very different approaches. Like I'm going to be far more likely to just dive headfirst into something and just like kind of brute force it into working. But internally today, we're still really focused on what we're developing as our full send formula, and a big part of that is how are we aggregating all of our data across the firm, from client service to task management to margin to internal metrics that we're measuring on success of the firm. Like, how do we aggregate all of that into one place so that as we manage the firm, we can more holistically look at the health of the business? And there's a lot of tools out there to help with that, but we're building out a custom solution in the form of a data warehouse to help bubble those things up and more predictively understand how to manage the business. And this is a long project that we're working on. We've got our data team on that right now, and so we'll be iterating through it and try to figure out how to best manage internally. And hopefully once that project is completed, we'll be able to share a lot more about how we've accomplished it, what we're doing, and hopefully bring more benefit to other firm owners.
Now, and I was wondering about that. I mean, that's definitely something you could bring to other firm owners. Is that something you're going to bring to your clients too?
Oh yeah. So our data team, we're full service for our clients in terms of helping them build out their own data aggregation, warehousing, visualization, interpretation. There's a lot that goes into that. Whereas us, from an accounting perspective, we generally have a pretty narrow lens on financial reporting, and so we really want to bring in holistic data that our data team will be servicing for our clients. And we believe this is kind of the direction that the industry is going, and so firms should probably be starting to lean into things like that. But that's a discussion for another day.
It is. So Sarah, hi Sarah. Sarah Laidlaw, fangirl right here. See Sarah around at lots of places. Sarah, I believe you're in Texas, so I hope the last couple of days have gone well for you. AP services is huge. Would love a way to triage, review, and then push bills to Makers Hub. So to be honest, because I was thinking I was going to lie, but instead I think I'm just going to be honest. It's such a dumb saying, but it keeps coming out of my mouth. So most of the document collection where you're going to publish over, I would rather see the approval native in that app. So Dext is coming up with approvals right now, but you're in Georgia. Okay. But what we're doing until the Dext, so there's Dext approval for expenses has been live for a long time, and you can have multi-level approvals, the whole bit. Approvals for AP bills before it goes over to QuickBooks Online is in beta right now. Until then, and Sarah, this might be something you could do, and I'd need to know more. Makers Hub is so new to me. I'm a little excited that it extracts so many line items. But what we are doing currently is a system of you could use tags if there are tags in Makers Hub. I would get those bills if you can. There's a way to get them in there first and then have them approved there. Otherwise, it's a bit of a filing collecting nightmare if you're Google Drive or email. If you can get them into the product first, and then if there is the ability for notes, flags, tags, or messages, that's the system we're using right now, is flags with notes. And they're one-word keyword notes. It can be simply for approval and then take out the word for. It's approved. As long as you have a system within Makers Hub but I don't know how robust it is even with flags and tags and things that you can notify. So maybe you can let us know a little bit more about that. But if there's any way to get it into the document collection system before, that would be great. Otherwise, there is a product called Approval Max. You could use another add-on called Approval Max. You can look that up, what the ins and outs are of Approval Max. Roman, are you familiar with Makers Hub? It came out of nowhere. I saw it at scaling, and I'm like, where did this come from? This is cool.
Yeah, I wasn't familiar with it, and that's why I love having these conversations because folks like Sarah in Georgia just helped me discover something new today. So I'll take a look at it. It looks very similar to how we utilize Ramp in terms of, automation of AP and, the syncing to QuickBooks. And Ramp's a free tool right now, and it is a really, really solid platform.
Now,
But I am
Jason,
very interested in this.
super quick. Jason did, there's a video that Jason did on Makers Hub. So that's actually where it
Okay.
first came into my purview. Jason. Is there anybody on the planet and counting other than Jason Stats? I am kidding. I love Jason. Totally admire what he's up to. Doesn't mean I'm not going to riff on him. So Jason did a good video on Makers Hub. And then they happened to be at Scaling New Heights. And that was the first time within a month, there they were all of a sudden in our face. So it's worth taking a look at. Super fresh, but it does line item extraction from the bills. So I have a convenience store that they can get a bill they really are in the weeds of cost percent of income. And so it can extract, candy, groceries, all of those things.
And I think that's becoming just the base layer expectation for any platform like this. It's very similar in Ramp where we have that same extraction that occurs and then the ability to consolidate specific line items within the tool on the back end. So it'll auto calculate and consolidate specific transactions that are received on an invoice. And so, really cool.
So
I'm thankful.
in Dext, you can definitely do line items, but not super robust that every single line item gets extracted. It does extract a lot of data. I actually don't know what's coming for Dext on individual line item, but there's a ton going on in there. But that definitely Makers Hub interested me in that. Jason with the smile. Right, Sarah? Detailed extraction, machine learning is amazing. It really is. Yeah, I bet for your nonprofit job costing. Yep. Imagine for a convenience store that's in the weeds, a job or a grocery store or any of them, right? Yeah.
I love it. Well, I know on the next episode, when we're going to be roasting processes and workflows, we're going to be looking at firm management. Right? Or client management. Which one was it?
We did client management.
Firm.
I think we're on firm management next time.
Yes. And so over the course of the next, I believe, 2 weeks, we'll be continuing to gather questions and feedback and different use cases that we can pull up live and just workshop through together. We also love this engagement. So Sarah, Debbie, and Vahid, thanks for commenting here. And we'll look to see some more of this as we continue to drop these workflow roasts live.
Oh, sorry. The storm is rolling. I know it doesn't look like I have a storm here. I can feel my internet cutting out. But it is lightning and thunder right over there like mad. So my dogs are, right under here. Okay. All right. Well, that was great. Thanks, Roman.
Yeah, that was fun. We will be back, I believe, in 2 weeks. Is that right, Kelly?
I'd have to look. I'd have to look at our schedule. I know we're also I'm going to be at Tax Twitter Retreat. And that's next week. And the week after is Bridging the Gap. And then Nashville, I am seeing you at Bridging the Gap. And are you going to ZeroCon in Nashville?
I will see you at Bridging the Gap, not ZeroCon this year.
Okay. That's great. Thanks, Debbie. I appreciate you joining in with us. But okay, so we will see you in 2 weeks live. And thanks, Roman. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, this is great. Stay up to date on YouTube, on Twitter, on LinkedIn. You'll see Financial Sense posting when the next live recording is, and we will be back at it soon.